This is episode 109 in our road to Unicum, and today, by popular request, I review the Leopard PTA. This is a Tier 9 German medium tank in World of Tanks, and we're going to look at it on a pair of maps that I know people don't like, based on the recent poll that I had on my community tab. I was asking people what they thought as far as which maps that they had blocked, and Empire's Border came in at number 3, just behind Ensk and Paris. So we're going to look at this Empire's Border match, and then we're going to also look at Glacier. Now, the Leopard PTA has a pretty rough reputation, and the main reason why is both the turret armor and the hull armor are really weak, and it limits what you're able to do with the tank, and it also has a fairly large profile. Now, that being said, there are a fair number of people I've talked to in game who are fans of the tank. The gun is fantastic. It has superb alpha of 420, and it also has superb silver APCR penetration of 278. So you really don't have to fire much gold to get this tank to work and penetrate, and the accuracy is also superb at 0.31. Now, coming up to this hill from the north side, I'm trying to get up here before their tanks do. There's a little bush, that's a couple bushes that are ahead of me, one directly to my right, which I'm going to stop at just in case there are any tanks below me in the valley. And then seeing as how I don't get lit and I don't spot anything, I can move up to this other bush here. Now you have to be careful when you do this. Obviously this is super exposed, but what this allows me to do, since I had loaded high explosive, is get the first shot advantage on the Scorpion G, since I was behind a bush and he didn't spot me. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and switch back to APCR. The nice thing is you can pre-select what your next round is going to load, by go ahead and clicking the button. After you can even do this while you're loading. You can load one type of ammo and then specify that you want a different type of ammo as the shell after that one to load. Now I'm setting up a trap here. I'm going to see if this Indian Panzer pokes again, and since he does, this is going to allow me again to get that first shot advantage. Such a crucial concept in every tank, but especially for the Leopard PTA, given that it is a paper medium tank, right? It is in many ways the squishy glass cannon archetype that you see in MMOs. I think the biggest issues is that aside from its speed, it really doesn't have particularly good escapability, right? So if you play games like World of Warcraft, you'll have mages with blink and ice block, and if you play rogues, you can go invisible. This is one squishy DPS that doesn't have particularly good escapability. And it also doesn't have either crushing DPM or crushing alpha. Now granted, the alpha for a medium is really good, but it's not like you're hitting tanks for 600 and then you can go hide away from them. Now notice that E4 had just fired, so I was paying attention to that, and so I'm able to take my time and put a shot in through his cupola. And he's in a pretty tough situation, because if the main areas where this map is typically won are these two southwest brawling areas. So the area down that's by J2, and then this area that I'm currently in around G4. And what often helps one side is if they can get on this plateau here on the left that I'm rotating clockwise to, and then we can put the pinch on their tanks that are below us, so that they're taking fire from two different angles, and that makes for easy penetrations. This M103 is recognized they're in a bad situation, but he's actually gone backwards up a slope where I'm able to shoot down on his turret roof. You want to, as much as possible, not expose your turret roof, because in pretty much every tank it's really thin. So the Leopard PTA, like I said, the top speed is really good. It also has excellent shell velocity of 1480, which means that the shots are pretty much like lasers. You click, it hits almost instantaneously. The tank also has pretty good camo, around a rating of 30 in the garage if you've got brothers in arms, as well as the concealment skill, and I'm putting those shots in through its cupola. The other thing I can do now that he's facing to my right is put shots in through the side of his hull armor. And you can see this battle really resolves itself very quickly because of what happens in this brawling area around G4. And what I like to do, the reason why I went up that middle road to the north, right, going up along the F lane, is depending where they are, you can shoot on them down the valley, you can spot their deployment, and then I can come to where that cap flag is from the northeast and shoot on the sides of tanks. Now that actually didn't need to happen because our tanks got up to that G4 hill area first, so their tanks were caught underneath them, which is a tough position for their side. But right here is like a great example of the limitations of this tank. So I proxy spotted this WZ. We both know each other's there. I don't have any armor, I can't play games with like side scraping, etc. to try to get a shot on him, so I have to wait until he's fired and he starts to move. Right, and I think that's the biggest issue with this tank. Like, aside from initiating engagements with vision control or when you're flanking, if you're face up fighting another tank, brawling, etc., the fact that they can aim anywhere and penetrate you and deal damage is a big disadvantage for you, driving the Leopard PTA. And that's the main reason why, despite the fact that I've played this tank and been able to get it to work, I'm probably not going to grind it out to unlock the Tier 10 Leopard 1, because it's essentially just a slightly up-tiered version of this tank with the same limitations with respect to the craptastic armor. It is amazing, like, if you look at the description of this video and see the number of pluses, this tank has, I listed like 9 pluses for it or 8 pluses for it and only 3 minuses, but 2 of those minuses are absolutely huge. They're really poor armor. This is a kind of a very sketchy decision on my part to keep driving around. What I should have done as soon as I saw him, take a shot, eat maybe one of his when he turns around, but back up to the hill. By continuing to kind of YOLO and go around, I'm giving him plenty of time to unload his clip on me, and then for whatever reason, I was trying to figure out what this guy was doing in real time. Like, this 277 was going in the wrong direction and kind of turned around sideways. Whatever. Part of the thing too is a tank like this that's really squishy, that has difficulty managing situations on its own. It's, in my opinion, harder to play tanks like this solo queue relative to other tanks, right? So like, I reviewed the 430 and the 430U and the T44, and that's a tank that's pretty comfortable solo with. You don't necessarily need someone else to help you, whereas with this tank, if you're brawling, unless you're sure that they've fired or they're not looking at you, if you try to exchange shots with the other driver, you're most likely going to take damage, right? And I remember people saying, the Leopard PTA, oh, just treat your HP like it's your armor, and like, I've always found that argument to be completely nonsensical. You have no armor, everything will damage you, you're highly susceptible to high explosive, which is really bad. And really, the main thing you can try to do, what I do here, is get to, just like I did in the last video, get to a hill or ridge quickly, try to get there in position and fire on your opponents. And the main key to understand about Glacier, if you're playing this area, I play this ridge from either side, either spawn, is you're not just trying to look at tanks that are in front of you. A lot of times you can aim down to the right, like I'm doing here, and fire on tanks that are exposing their side armor. And I was a little bummed about that, because the UDAS wasn't even looking at me, and his snapshot went through the very front of my hull armor. But it was still worth taking the shot. In a lot of cases, I'll get that shot off and then not take any damage in return. One thing to be really careful of, and we've been talking a lot about the concepts of perpendicular fire. In a lot of cases, you're not trying to actually shoot the tanks directly in front of you, right? Like, if I wanted to go attack that UDAS 1516, I have to go up and over the ridge and way expose my tank to get that shot off. That's just not smart. But what I can do is climb the ridge here and shoot tanks that are exposed. For some reason, that's my mirror. That's the enemy Leopard PTA. He didn't have me lit. Most likely, he is not running optics, which he should be, because he should have spotted me just sitting up there on the ridge. But since I've been spotted, I'm just gonna kind of hang out and wait. Right? Wait. The easiest way is just to either look at the clock, count off about 10 to 12 seconds, or just wait until the thing that you lit drops from view. And it usually means that you've both stopped spotting each other. And right there, that Leopard driver is making the cardinal sin of damage before position. He's stopping to take a shot at me while he's in the open, right? And granted, we both failed to damage each other, but what he was doing was far higher risk. And most of the time that's going to end up poorly for him, because I'd spotted him. He actually got shot at by one of my teammates. Now, I generally don't recommend playing the southern part of the map, because it's such a narrow corridor to push through. But in this case, like, we didn't really have anyone go that way. We have a couple TDs that are directly to my east, the Waffenträger and the T30. But the problem is that their tanks, like their T54, he has an advantageous posture against me, right? So if I get spotted, he could potentially shoot on me while not being exposed to enemy fire. So I've got to be really careful about this. I don't really have anywhere I can go. This is still an important position to play. I just need to be wary of the fact that I can take fire from the southeast. And then this Skoda overexposed himself. And this is kind of a hard thing to do, is kind of coming around a corner when so many tanks on my team, 14 tanks, are still alive, and try to pull off that maneuver. right? But we're definitely in a tough position, and now their T-54 is firing down in our direction. It looks like he's targeting my friendly T-54 is right next to me. Actually, he should be shooting me. I'm the squishier target. I'm the easier kill with a dangerous gun. So I'm a little bit fortunate I didn't get targeted there. But, I recognize I can't stay here. I'm going to keep taking shots that I have really no hope in bouncing. You can get the occasional troll bounce on the edges of the turret due to the way the ricochet mechanics work, but you can't count on it. And right here, I'm going to pay attention. So watch this. Udez, he just fired, so I've got a window to get to him. Now this is the tough thing. This tank has excellent gun depression of 8 degrees, but notice how far I have to go up and over the ridge in order to shoot at that Udez's lower plate. And that's part of the advantage the Udez has over me, where that's an amazing hull down tank, and he can expose his hull, or rather expose his turret very safely and have a high confidence that he's going to bounce a lot of shots, whereas I absolutely cannot make that assumption in this tank. Right? And I really cannot stress how much a limiting factor it is to have both a weak turret and a weak hull, because opponents can snapshot you. Basically, if your tank fills their reticle and they fire, there's a high likelihood you're going to take damage. Now this ramp up to the top of this hill is interesting, and in many ways it's similar to trying to rush the hill in mines. If you get up here, it can be really powerful, especially since early to mid game, if a lot of tanks on both sides go to this northwest brawling area, you can shoot down on enemy tanks that are facing sideways, right? But I'm going to skip ahead here because there's nothing going on up here. Their 257 and their T95 and their JPE are not coming around that corner at C1. Right, so I have a good position, but it's essentially useless. Actually, sorry, I had the location wrong. The T95 is in the trench below me, right? So originally I was thinking maybe go after that T95 since he's a non-turreted, very slow tank destroyer, and then end up running into the Udez and then finishing him off. But I've lost the majority of my hit points here, and I'm a little fortunate that my hit points aren't lower from when their T-54 could have been targeting me, which he should have. I'm a much easier target to pen than either the T-54 or the T-49 who were around me. So I go back here hoping to get a shot on this 257 and to help keep our JPE alive. The JPE is in danger of getting flanked here, right? As their JPE moves up in the 257, those two could potentially work together to pick off our JPE. And certainly it's really tough to play a non-turreted, slow, brawling tank destroyer because you can get flanked and picked off easily. Okay, now I've got a shot here on the 257. He's got a really good armor profile. I have to snapshot that because I can't bounce anything realistically. I don't want to give him time to aim in. That shot missed, but you'll see Unicums and Super Unicums do this a lot. We'll snapshot a lot, just keep that gun hot, trying to minimize risk. Obviously if we can, we'll aim in, or should, and you'll see me make a mistake in not aiming in later when I really should. Okay, so their 257 has gone around that rock to my right, and so I can't go behind him because their JPE has been spotted at C1. And then there is one really kind of quirky thing about this tank. The gun depression off the rear of the tank is terrible. So it's actually -1 degrees of gun depression, or you can't aim the gun even level off the back of the tank, so you have to get the gun over the sides of the tank or the front, and that's when you'll get that -8 degrees of gun depression. Whereas over the back it's, I guess, +1. If you look at a tanks.gg, it says -1, which means it's actually a negative max gun depression, which means it's slightly pointing upwards. Okay, so time to flex and see what else we can find, see if we can outspot opponents. Obviously their T95 is going to be slow, so if I find him, I can work him. And there is a potential that we could make the run to try to get their arty. As it turns out, their arty abandons their base. I think this was too early for him to go. He might have been feeling anxious because there was nobody protecting him, on that shelf where the arties typically hang out, somewhere between like H1 on the arc over towards K2, right? And I'm really not sure why he didn't run as soon as I fired that first shot, or back up rather, try to defeat my reload. Okay, so unfortunately our JPE gets taken out, and so there are two non-turreted tank destroyers together. Those guys can work together. If it's just one, I could try to run around them, flank them, do tracking shots, etc. But if they're two, then I really can't do that safely. Now check out the amazing shell velocity here on this, such a great long distance shot, probably at about 500 meters, and the shell hits him in the blink of an eye, and it makes it so much easier to hit targets that are moving, hit targets at range, hit targets that are about to pull back behind hardcover. This tough thing for our T30, he's trying to stay active and pushing up, but the problem is that even if he just didn't die there, right, and he and the other guys were kind of just waiting for someone to go around a corner to shoot each other, the T-49 could fire down on him, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a trap, because I'm also at low hit points. I don't know if they're going to go back towards their calf or they're going to come around this corner. So I'm going to set a trap here, and notice, I'm very slightly side scraped. I'm not going to bounce anything from the side, but as soon as I fire, I would just pull in, right? And I'm going to skip ahead there in the battle, like I think about half a minute or so, because basically I was just waiting, right? Because I don't want to charge forward, come around the corner into one of their guns and die, because at that point, who knows what will happen. But now that I know that their tanks have been spotted and they're likely facing to the south, this is a good time for me to move up here. And it's one of those things, like with a tank like this that has no armor, like you really don't have a choice, right? You have to play it very cautiously. I mean, I could have just driven up here and gotten to these guys earlier, but there's no way for me to know, are they going to be looking in my direction or are they looking south? That prior shot on the T95 was a terrible mistake. I should have taken my time aiming in. I snapshotted when I didn't need to and missed that first shot. That T95 should already be dead. Granted, our team finished him off, but that was a mistake. I was kind of hoping the JP and I would, by silent agreement, just agree not to shoot each other. But he's turning around to face me now, so I'm obliged to track him. And then this right here is absolutely ridiculous. So I'm about to get pinched in. I can't try running across the front because he's most likely going to shoot me. And then I get a miracle tracking shot here, which was so lucky. And I'm obviously aiming down onto his drive wheel in case he repairs and comes around, try to get another tracking shot, but thankfully survived that battle. So this is a tank, I ended up actually getting unlocked for free thanks to the tech tree rework of 1.9. So I had partially played the Indian Panzer, and then with the 1.9 patch got this tank for free, which was great to be able to try it out. Granted, I did have to deal with getting the module upgrades, but yeah. Let me know your thoughts on the Leopard PTA, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.